questions. This is the highlights tour, and I think the very first highlight, especially if you're not from Philadelphia, I know a couple people, and I didn't talk to you. I know
We're
you
not
from
from
Philadelphia. Okay. Well, one of our biggest highlights is the museum itself. The architecture of the museum is within itself just magnificent. The museum, the building is about 100, it's almost 100 years old. It's really 98 years old. But when they were building it, it was a lot of controversy because the architect, they're talking about the early 1900s, the architect was an African American. And that in itself had started to be a problem then because they didn't fit in the late 1800s, about 1890s. She was the weatherman on top of the RCA building in New York City. And she would pivot on their ball. She would, roll around. She had a cloak on because we're talking about the 1880s, and she couldn't be naked, 800 feet up in the air. So she had a little cloak, and she had a.
这里是电梯往第一层走。
In 1682, William Penn, who was a Quaker in England, the Quakers were ostracized in England. The king wanted them out of the country. So the king at the time had this new world. And he gave, excuse me, I'm sorry. Galleries, it just shows the progression of American art and up until about the 1850s. It's a fun place to go because all these things that we think about American art, surprising how it got to be American art. A lot of it was from slavery, land swindling, and the other one that people never think about is drug trafficking. Drug trafficking in the 1770s and all porcelain, which we call China. It all came from China. That's where the name came from. But you have to think in the 1790s, they didn't know anything about American money, so they could not actually trade, but they could trade opium. And that's how all of that China that is in our gallery and everybody else's, the Chinese export porcelain, that's how it all got here. It was legal at the time, so. But that's another interesting story that you will learn when you do that. Everything has a problem that's attached to it.
What's the date of that?
1682. Right. And we were one of the very first colonies out of the 13 colonies. And that's when the king started, giving land to whoever wanted to come over. And so even Delaware was the first, but because the Dutch were there. And so were the Swedes. But Pennsylvania, the English came over first to Pennsylvania.
So the Dutch came to Delaware first.
Hmm.
Dutch Dodges came to Delaware first.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, okay.
But you said it originated from William Penn, who was a Quaker who basically got kicked out.
He got kicked out of England because it was only the Church of England, and he was practicing a whole new religion. This is where you need to be. This is the South Indian Temple. And the whole idea in 1928 when this museum actually started, you can sit down if you want, because I'll be here for a minute. Was the fact that people didn't travel the way we travel now. And they wanted the people who actually came to the museum to actually walk through time. That's why we have all of our galleries as some sort of time error, attached to it. And how do you walk through time in Asia or Europe? And this is how we walk through time, because this was all just so fascinating in 1928. But there was a couple who were celebrating their honeymoon. They were from Philadelphia. And they decided that they were going to take a 2-year honeymoon to Asia and they were in South India. They actually found the ruins of this temple. And they were just kind of laying on the ground. And wife and the husband just looked at this whole thing and said, this is really fabulous. And they were trying to build, but they were thinking about building a house in Bryn Mawr, which is on the outskirts of Philadelphia. And one of them said this would be excellent for the garden. Finish their honeymoon. Well, these were 2 years of probably being in Philadelphia at the time. So they did arrive in Philadelphia, and all of these statues and the buildings and everything. But by the time these arrived,